I made this message for you. For you, for you.
What's up, Internet? Welcome to Fiction Forge.
On today's episode, we're going to take a closer look at silicone and show you a few cool ways of using it in your project.
We'll be taking a look at what it is exactly, and a few cool things you can do with it.
And we'll try and show you a few cool tricks you maybe didn't know.
What do you think, Greyballs guy?
Let's go in for a closer look. Easy.
You'll be surprised to know that the rubbery substance known as silicone is made from the same basic stuff as glass and computer chips.
Silicon makes up approximately a quarter of the Earth's crust, and it is often harvested from quartz. From there it is processed into a metallic form.
Through some pretty fancy scientific chemical and physical processes, they arrange the silicone into long chains that form the basis of most of its rubbery forms.
Here are a few helpful things to know when getting started choosing your silicone.
First of all, there are two different cure types, acetoxy and neutral.
Acetoxy is the most common type. It smells heavily of vinegar when it's curing. It cures relatively quickly, and it generally doesn't stick well to most plastics, glass or aluminium.
Neutral releases alcohol as it cures. This type tends to be more expensive. It cures slower, and the time tends to vary more. It generally sticks well to most plastics, glass, aluminium, and stone.
Here are a few of the different kinds that you could find commonly available.
General purpose or builder's silicone.
Aquarium or marine silicone.
Two-part silicone. Food-safe silicone.
Sanitary silicone. High-temperature silicone.
Glazing silicone.
Modulus refers to how soft and flexible the silicone is.
Low is soft and flexible. High is more solid and durable.
Here's a few pros and cons.
Here are the pros. It's UV resistant, temperature resistant, and has low chemical reactivity and toxicity. It also forms watertight seals and only sticks well to few things, which can be good or bad depending on what you're trying to do with it. Electrically, it can be insulative or conductive, and it offers long-lasting flexibility and lifespan.
And here are the cons. It can have a pungent odor. The cure times vary. It can be very messy to handle and a nightmare to get out of your clothes.
Apart from its more common uses, like in construction and making mermaid's tails, ooh-wee, can it make a mermaid's tail? It's also a top choice for making reusable, flexible molds, mostly for casting resin and other liquid plastics.
But where we think it really shines creatively is in creating hyper-realistic pieces that blur the line between fantasy and reality. I mean, cinema makeup has been fooling you for decades with it.
Check out these life-size sculptures made by Thomas Kuebler. They're gloriously creepy and realistic.
I think we can all agree that these characters would make for the best Tim Burton movie ever.
Here are a few works created by Boularis on DeviantArt. He also really knows his way around some silicone.
But holy hell, can silicone make some of the most badass masks you ever did see. Check out a few of these face melters from Immortal Masks.
The attention to detail with all this work is utterly staggering, and I'm sure that is in no small part thanks to silicone.
When it comes to coloring silicone, there's two ways that work pretty well that we know of. First of all, you got your food coloring and you got your acrylic paint. You can pull off some pretty interesting effects with both of these, but the main difference between the two is the food coloring produces more translucent colors, while as the acrylic produces more pastel opaque colors.
So we like to use a sturdy plastic bag when mixing up small batches of silicone.
We are using both corners of the bag to mix up the two different batches, so we don't have to waste another bag.
The glow-in-the-dark acrylic on this side,
And the food coloring on the other.
then give them both a good mix in the bag.
Silicone when wet can be a sticky nightmare. You get a little bit in your hair or on your clothes and it can really mess your day up. You can try using rubber gloves, but they don't really help. They just keep your hands clean. But here are a few tips that really do help. Putting the silicone into water with ordinary dish soap stops it from being able to stick to anything and makes it a breeze to handle. On the other hand, you've got cornstarch. You knead the silicone into it until it stops sticking to stuff. You just gradually add more and more until it becomes manageable.
We can now mix up some soapy water, but don't skimp on the soap if you want this to work right.
Cutting the corner of the bag allows you to pipe the silicone straight into the soapy water.
See how it becomes like a ball of brightly colored clay in your hands.
Don't mess around with it for too long though, or it'll cure before you can do anything with it.
And now we add a bit of cornstarch so we can take the acrylic one and make it into proto-putty.
It's like making bread dough. You just keep kneading it in until it's not sticky.
But we found even with the proto-putty, it was easier to handle after a generous soaping.
Boom! There we have it. Colored, moldable silicone. And both will imprint and take shape well.
Working with silicone leads to lots of these weird scrap rubber things. We found these ones in the mixing bag from earlier.
We like to keep these strange artifacts, so we can chop them up into wet silicone to either fill space or create interesting effects and textures.
So we've used silicone in a bunch of projects over the years and we find it incredibly versatile. And it's especially adept at creating realistic, damp, organic textures. It can either carry the entire project, like in the Venom's case here, or it can support and accentuate the other materials, like in the Hydralist case with his gums, or in the Maokai's case, where we created some realistic fake moss and some mushroom shells that are illuminated.
Right, so for the fake moss we crush up a bit of this florist foam. Then we use the same bag from earlier to mix it up with the silicone.
And then smear it on a friend's hard drive, because hard drives are silicone proof, right?
And the foam gives it an interesting texture that glistens to make it more moss-like. With an unsoaped finger you can pat the silicone to make it spiky.
The hole is from a raindrop that completely messed up the silicone's ability to stick.
Now let's slap some silicone on this intricately carved wooden box to try and get an imprint.
The soapy water makes applying the silicone as easy as buttering toast.
So this was a learning moment. Don't use glass as a flat surface for silicone made for fish tanks. It sticks, duh. So hence the knife to try and get it off.
You've got to take your time prying the silicone impression up, or it could rip or bring bits of the box up with it.
This carving is too cool for just you, box.
Now we can reproduce this carving out of a variety of materials whenever we want.
With a bit of wire and some colored silicone, you can whip up some cool toys in no time. I made this spider by creating a wire armature and then just forcing some colored silicone around it.
And if you weren't sold on the intricacy of that box, let's see if it can steal shapes from Mother Nature herself.
And while we're busy stealing shapes, we figure, cover this aloe too.
And maybe that hard drive again with some glow-in-the-dark silicone.
And maybe this other leaf as well. And then 15 minutes later, you can peel away your print.
This one was a failure because the silicone had already started to cure when we molded it. It didn't turn out right like the others.
Anybody need a stylish grip for something? This one even glows in the dark.
We asked ourselves, where would a few silicone leaves really shine?
But we had no success. So we just stuck them on some lights and hoped for the best.
Not bad at all if you ask me. Only another 95 to cover the rest of the lights. Yay. Patreon helps you to support creators that produce content you want to see more of through a subscription-based service.
It also helps us to connect with our audience in order to produce better content.
Once again, thanks so much for watching.
We hope this gave you a bit of inspiration for some cool silicone creations of your own.
Join us next time when we'll be showing you how to be a Halloween boss on a budget.
We'll be using silicone and a cheap store-bought mask to forge a new mask so badass it'll make children cry.
Till then, we hope to see you around the forge in the future.
And don't forget...
Wizards only, fools. Keep it tight.